All right, let's talk about AI. There is so much hype, right? It's everywhere. But today, we're going to cut through all that noise and get down to the one question that really matters for your business. What's the actual, real world financial return? So let's dive in and figure out how to calculate the real value of AI. And this is probably the question you're asking yourself, right? Is AI a smart investment or is it just another cost? Is this a strategic move that's actually going to pay off or is it just another expensive line item on the budget? It's a pretty simple question on the surface, but man, the answer can feel incredibly complex. And that complexity, it leads us straight into something we can call the AI investment paradox. And it's a real dilemma, one that stops so many great ideas before they even get off the ground. Yeah, we called this specific problem ROI paralysis. And you've probably felt this. You know AI could help. It makes sense in your gut, right? Conceptually, it all clicks. But then, when it's time to actually build the business case, the hard numbers, they're just missing. And without those numbers, the whole project just grinds to a halt. Inaction. And this is so important to remember. AI itself is not the goal. It's the means to an end. I mean, the whole point isn't just to say, hey, look, we have AI. The real goal is to use it to achieve a specific business outcome. Faster workflows, happier customers, more productive teams. This really shifts your focus from just the tech to the actual result. Okay, so to get to that result, we've got to make sure we're even measuring the right thing in the first place. And that brings us to a huge common mistake that businesses make. They confuse being busy with being productive. I mean, it sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, right? Being busy isn't the same as being productive. Duh. But think about it. So many organizations measure activity. Emails sent, hours logged, instead of actual output. They're measuring how hard people are pedaling, not how far the bike is actually going. And check this out. This is like a fork in the road for your whole business strategy. If you're stuck measuring busyness, you're on a hamster wheel. And when you get overloaded, what's your only solution? Hire more hamsters, add more cost. But if you shift your focus to measuring flow, everything changes. Suddenly, the goal isn't just to run faster, it's to remove the friction that's slowing you down. You're not just adding cost, you're adding real value, real capacity. And once you start looking for those problems with flow, you start seeing them everywhere. These are those common friction points. Things like, repetitive manual tasks that drive people crazy, or your staff having to act as the human glue between two systems that just won't talk to each other. All that wasted time re-entering the same data in 3 different places. Or, and this is a big one, critical knowledge being trapped inside the head of just one person. This is where AI can be an absolute game changer. So the big question is, how do we break out of that ROI paralysis and actually start fixing these friction points? Well, you need a clear framework. And that's exactly what we're going to build right now, your 5-step formula to calculate the real return on investment. So here it is. This is our roadmap. It's a really straightforward 5-part process that takes all the guesswork out of the equation. First, we're going to establish your baseline. Then, we'll identify the tangible benefits. After that, we apply the simple ROI formula, interpret what those results actually mean, and finally, turn all that insight into action. And here's the engine for the whole thing. Now, don't let the math scare you. It's a super standard financial formula. All we're doing is taking the value we gained, subtracting what it cost us, and then dividing that by the cost. That gives us our return as a nice, clean percentage. Simple, right? Okay, theory is great, but let's make this real. To see how this formula actually works in the wild, we're going to walk through a case study. Let's talk about a council officer who is buried in permit applications. All right, so here's the before picture. This is our baseline. Before AI, this officer's entire week, their entire job was just consumed by reading documents, checking for compliance, writing up recommendations. It was a grind. And depending on how complex the application was, they could only get through maybe 3 to 8 of them a week. It was a classic bottleneck in the system. And then, boom. After they brought in an AI assistant, the game completely changed. The AI does all the heavy lifting. It reads, it summarizes, it flags potential issues. So it used to take a full week of work, now just becomes a 30-minute review for the officer. A whole week down to 30 minutes. That's incredible. So the crucial result here is that the council's capacity to handle work just skyrocketed. Think about it. If the demand for permits went up, they could now handle hundreds more per year with the exact same team. They completely avoided the need for new hires, and the return on that investment, you ready for this? A massive 575%. Yeah, a number like that, that's the kind of thing that ends ROI paralysis for good. So how in the world do you get to a number that big? Let's look at the actual math. The value wasn't just about doing things faster. The real value was in avoiding over $500,000 in new hiring costs. So when you put that up against the $80,000 investment for the AI, well, the return is just undeniable. And check out the payback period. The entire system paid for itself in about 2 months. That's less time than it takes to even onboard a new employee. Now that is efficiency. But look, the story doesn't just end with a big, flashy number. The true value of AI is often way more nuanced than just saving money. So let's talk about the real return. And this is such an important point. The goal here was never to replace the council officer. It was to amplify their expertise. By automating all that low-value, repetitive grunt work, the officer could finally focus on what humans do best: high-value judgment and critical decision-making. And this brings us to this really powerful idea called capacity ROI. See, AI doesn't just save money, it creates capacity. It literally frees up human hours. But here's the catch. That saving is only valuable if you strategically reinvest that time. So where are those hours going now? Are they going into R&D for your next product? Into proactive customer service that builds incredible loyalty? Into the strategic planning you never had time for before? That's where the real gain is made. And that's why this is so powerful. The technology, the AI, it delivers the potential. It opens the door. But it's leadership that has to walk through that door and convert that potential into actual performance, whether that's better service, faster delivery, or more innovation. So, what does a good ROI look like in the real world? It's not always about shrinking your team. Actually, it's more often about handling more work with the same team. It's about avoiding new hires as your business grows. It's about cutting down on that expensive overtime spend. And maybe most importantly, it's about improving the quality of your product or your customer experience, because your team finally has the time to be creative and proactive instead of just constantly putting out fires. So let's land on this key idea. AI is a tool, and what it creates is the most valuable resource we have: time. The smartest businesses, the ones that are going to win, will be the ones who see that time not as a cost to be cut, but as a precious asset to be reinvested directly into growth. And that really leaves us with one final, and I think critical question for you. This isn't just about technology, it's about strategy. Once AI creates that extra capacity in your business, the real work begins. How are you going to reinvest it? Because that decision right there is what will determine your true return on investment.